Good morning or afternoon from wherever you're joining us. I would like to welcome you to our webinar today. We're happy to be discussing unlocking reliable hydrology data with Nebraska Department of Natural Resources. So we'll do a couple of quick introductions just to let you know who we are. My name is Dirk Edwards. I'm a customer success manager for Aquarius here at Aquatic Informatics, and we're joined by Jim Williams, and I'll let him do a quick introduction.
Greetings, everyone. I've been with the state of Nebraska for 24 years, all of that time as part of the Department of Natural Resources doing surface water engineering of one kind or another. And for half of that time, I've been working with stream gauging information. And we will tell you a little bit more about the team that really does the work in the field and the kind of numbers that we are working with and monitoring later on in this program. I've got a master's degree in geological engineering and a bachelor's in geological science, along with some experience in the field.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. All right, we'll give a quick introduction on aquatic informatics before we dive too deeply into the webinar. Very brief overview. In case you weren't aware, Hydromet is one of our partners. Between Hydromet and Aquatic Informatics, we're present in 23 countries. Plus, we also have distribution partners in more than 90 countries. Here at AQI, I like to say our mission is empowering water experts to make data-driven decisions. That's one of our goals and what we are hoping to help you all achieve when you're using our software. And just to go over a couple of the challenges that we're all starting to see or face in our day-to-day lives, not to read through them all. Lots of them relate to water, obviously. I'm located in Alberta, Canada, in southern Alberta. So two of the biggest challenges we face locally are definitely drought and wildfires. We'll go through the agenda fairly quick. I've already done the brief introduction to AQI. I want to go over some of the webinar FYIs just to make sure you're all aware of them. We'll give a brief overview of Nebraska DNR, their history with Aquarius, transitioning to cloud and implementing WebPortal, and then the future for Nebraska DNR. And then lastly, we'll save some time at the end for a quick Q&A. So feel free to enter those questions throughout the presentation. We'll get to those at the end. So the webinar FYIs, in case you haven't noticed already, you're going to be placed on mute for the duration of the event. If there are any technical difficulties, please use the chat function to reach out. We have a brilliant team behind the scenes that will help out. And like I already mentioned, get your questions ready, submit those using the questions function. And we are recording this, so we'll submit or share that recording with you in a few days after the webinar is completed. All right, so to kick this off, I'm gonna ask a few questions of Jim and we'll let him answer. We'll work our way through. So Jim, what can you tell our audience about Nebraska DNR and the water monitoring program that you support?
Well, first of all, Nebraska is located right in the center of the 48 contiguous states in the United States, right in the center of the country there. We have an awful lot of miles of streams. There are some people who brag that Nebraska has more stream miles than any other state. And of course, that's nonsense because Alaska is so much bigger. I'm sure it has more miles. But the fact is that the geomorphology is very well defined. And we do have a lot of miles of drainages. We've got excellent aquifers in the state. We do an awful lot of surface water irrigation and groundwater irrigation, and we all know those two things are tied together. We irrigate on the order of 1 million acres from surface water and about 10 million acres from groundwater. So, and of course, the surface water in many cases is feeding the aquifers as the surface water moves through the state. Our department is focused on of course, agriculture and water rights, agriculture and related businesses, supporting businesses by far and away. That's our number one industry in the state of Nebraska. Most towns are built right on a waterway, and so the potential for flooding is always there. And we'll talk about flood monitoring later on here. And of course, from an administrative standpoint, drought is always a concern. And so our department is responsible for monitoring flow in the streams, and when it gets too low, then the junior water rights are asked to turn off and leave the senior water rights. We have actually on the order of 250 locations that we monitor. Of those, about 100 are canal or pump gauges feeding into the surface water irrigation system, and at least 120 stream gauges on natural flowing stream that we publish annual data. The others would be making up the 250 would be temporary sites perhaps, or sites that are monitored annually and we leave a transducer in place or something like that. And so along with the 16 transducers that we installed some time ago, we're looking at installing up to as many as 50 locations between small, easily installed radars that you can monitor through the cell work and additional transducers and so on. In the field offices, we have about 30 people reporting through to my boss, the same guy I report to. And this staff and I have kind of a dotted line relationship where they go out and do the site visits and do the stream gauge measurements. And then I and two of my partners work with them to make sure the data quality is there, and any issues that we have with our software and database and all of that. And that bottom point I'd like to mention is as a state agency, everything we do is driven by state statutes requiring that we track and administer the surface water. We will talk a little more about what data is available, but we try to download at least daily mean discharge for all gauges in the state so that it can all be looked together on one map or using similar charts. So doing that, we have links into USGS data and USBR data. We also are very proud. About 10 years ago, we started a program to take our old paper files, which date back to the 1800s, and they were all typed in by hand. We tried to use just scanning them and using character recognition. The trouble is with tabular data is you never know if it's jumping over a column or a row, and does it all line up? And so we ended up retyping all of that information, and it's all available on our websites. All of this data is available via a application programming interface, which is easily used with a spreadsheet if you're not a programmer. We have our real-time water website, which is our Aquarius WebPortal implementation. And bottom line is you can always ask one of the staff members to provide the data for you. This is what our stream gauging network looks like. And if you remember back to our first map we showed the streams on, the gauges follow the streams. So we have a few that are showing no flow at this time, but most of them have a little bit of flow.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. We wanted to send a quick poll out to the audience just to see how you are all currently managing your environmental data. If you can click on that quickly.
Be careful with that, because I was going to click C until I read below that it's Aquarius software. So it's, I guess C would be a generic one, some other software, and D is Aquarius specific. All right, I answered my version of the poll.
Hopefully everyone's been able to do that. Okay, we'll move on with our next question. So what were some of the major challenges that you faced before switching to Aquarius? And just give us a little bit of history on that.
We have been stream gauging, as I stated before, going back to before the year 1900. And of course, I don't know, probably the first, well, until personal computers came around, that was all done on paper. 20 years ago, we were doing it with a separate software that required storage on floppies. That was a huge problem. But we went to a SQL database um, in 2004, and it worked very well for us for more than 10 years. We ended up sticking with the prior software for a total of about 15 years. The issue that we faced was as the database grew, it just became unwieldy and it required more and more powerful servers. Also, the software was moved over to Nebraska's chief information officer location and behind other firewalls. And so when we would have the program crash and we had to reboot the server, um, it became us talking to the software folks, talking to the OCIO, Office of the Chief Information Officer, and it was just a huge problem. We also wanted the ability to get up and running quickly, and we were wanting to move to a virtual server on the OCIO system, and our prior software simply wouldn't run there. And so, in talking with Aquarius, something along the lines of 7 or so years ago, we were able to get an instance installed on a virtual server with the OCIO, and it ran just fine. And so that's when we made the big push to switch over to Aquarius. Yeah, some of the benefits of Aquarius, what we really liked about it, was the software was set up from the beginning, inherent to it, to be the single source of truth. So, as I mentioned, we had floppy disks in the various field offices. We have 6 of them around the state, where everything was filed, going back about 20 years now. Then it was all on SQL Server, but a lot of our site visit information was being stored in a file structure, first of all, locally. And I'd say starting about 10 years ago, we started using a single shared drive and a particular shared file tree within that system. And yet, some offices were doing it differently than other offices, and you'd have to really search to find levels information, other survey information, site visit information, all that kind of stuff. And Aquarius makes it really easy to upload any sort of document into the system. And so if it's not in Aquarius, then it didn't happen. And we're talking photographs, we're talking the station description, all of the site visits, anything that was on paper can be changed to PDF and then uploaded into Aquarius. So that has been very handy. Secondly, the standardization. The various review tools, the grading system, the approval system, all of that it's very easy to do it all the same. And we had all of the techs trained at the same time to do it in the same way. That's been really handy for review. The other thing is, for more than 10 years, we've been trying to keep up with our records month by month, typically. Sometimes we measure more than once a month. And that was really hard with our old system. And a lot of the technicians preferred just waiting until after the water year, and then they would review it all at once. But with Aquarius, it's very, very graphical. It's if you make an error, you don't lose your original data. And so the edit stack is you can switch around the order in which you did your edits, or delete an edit and add an edit. And it's made it very handy so that our guys like to come back with a site visit, upload all of that data, and take a quick look at the record since the previous site visit. And so that continuous real-time record working is a real thing, and it's been a huge benefit knowing that our information is up to site shortly, up to up to task shortly after they go out to a site visit. one thing that was quickly solved by Aquarius is we had decreased downtime. We were having to reboot our old server at least once a month. So at first, and then it became once a week, and then it became 3 times every 2 weeks. And so we've had less downtime. We were running it for about 2.5 years on an OCIO virtual server, and really most of our downtime was related to quarterly upgrades to the software, and especially if the database needed to be upgraded. Um, so all of these benefits were quickly realized by moving to Aquarius. Easier API access, browser-based, etc. About 2.5 years ago, we wanted the ability to present more of our information in a format that could be configured by the Streamgaging staff or anybody in the field offices, and that we would not need to have an IT programmer change anything on the website. And so we started looking at acquiring WebPortal. And what we liked about it is that we could have specialized views for various groups logging into WebPortal, customized configuration as to which charts they can see at which locations, all of that. We were very excited about the ability to alarm the data. We haven't really worked with that yet, but we've seen it done, and that is certainly in our next plans as far as whether or not a gauge is working correctly or not, or whether we've got rising flows, potential for flood, or where we have in-stream water rights. There's the possibility that the stream discharge is too low.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Jim. All right, so the next question we have is, what was it like to migrate to the cloud? I know you started with us on premise, and what were some of the biggest benefits you've seen since moving to the cloud?
I like to compare and contrast it to moving from our old software to Aquarius, and that went about as smooth as it could, but it was a huge effort. Aquarius came on site, looked at all of our data systems. We reduced our process from more than a dozen different steps to just 3 or 4 steps, getting the data into Aquarius. Um, but with all of that, our team was fully busy and couldn't really check it out. And so it came time for the final transfer, and they're like, "Hey, we got some sites missing here," and it was just because they were overwhelmed just getting our information in and finalized. On the other hand, moving from on premises to the cloud, um, there was like no change. We simply had to stop using it for a couple of days to give Aquatic Informatics plenty of time to install and double check our database. We just grabbed a copy of the full database. We did it twice. So we put it up there and we checked it out and we tested it and so on. And we gave our crews a particular date to aim for later in the month after they had done most of their monthly site visits. And then they just logged into a new location and they were off and running. The biggest benefit is reduced downtime. Now we know when the system is going to go down for a software upgrade or any other maintenance that's needed on the server. And when it's down for a half day or less, often just a couple of hours. And then it comes right back. And they generally have done it in the afternoon. And a lot of our folks like to upload the data first thing in the morning from their previous day's visit. So that's the biggest benefit is reduced downtime.
Awesome. I know I've worked with a couple of clients moving off the cloud, so it's always nice to hear that it's fairly seamless.
Mm.
So what partnerships does Nebraska DNR have with other organizations? Are you sharing data? Or are you pulling in outside data?
Yeah, we try to pull in all the outside data that we can. The main one is U.S. Geological Survey. They operate about as many locations in the state as we do. Theirs tend to be more at major stream confluences, both above and below. as well as at political boundaries. So coming into the state, leaving the state, those sorts of things. They also have far more locations in urban areas, and I believe most of those are in cooperation with, for example, City of Omaha or City of Lincoln. U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, that's especially in the western part of the state, and it's related to large irrigation projects. And we utilize their data for their streams, reservoirs, and canals. The Weather Service likes to use our data for their forecasting function, and so they actually grab all of our information. Especially, we notice that in the eastern part of the state where there's more risk for damage to life and property if there's any flooding. But we also get inquiries about updating our information from the Corps of Engineers. The natural resources districts are a pseudo-government level in Nebraska. There are 23 of them, mostly defined by river basins. And then, of course, local governments would include emergency management and that sort of a thing. So we work with everybody that we know of. And we also ingest a lot of upstream information from Colorado and Wyoming.
Okay. So what are some of the ways your organization is currently leveraging Aquarius to get more from your environmental data?
Okay, let's go through a few of them. One thing we've done is we have built a stations list, and this is just a screenshot from about a month ago with stations list, but you can filter out by the source. That might be a large irrigation company, DNR itself, USGS, Bureau of Reclamation, and so on. The type, that would be a stream gauge versus canal, reservoir, that sort of thing. Also, all of the headings on this listing are clickable, so you can rearrange everything by station number or name or by river basin and so on. And on this list, we try to include yesterday's daily mean, as well as the most recent reading and what that was the time for it today, as well as what is the date that a site visit was made and the shift was most recently changed. And so people that are watching this, the river system very closely, mostly for irrigation purposes, love this. Let me point out that you can see on the far left column here, although it's all hard to read, what does pop out is that the first three are in italics. And if you click on these, it will actually take you to the USGS website for that data. Whereas if it's in boldface, then it takes you to a summary page for each gauge, and then from that you can click through to WebPortal to look at it more closely or download any information you might be interested in. So that has been pretty handy to have. This is a look at our instance of WebPortal. This is our welcome dashboard, and you can see links to the recent podcasts put out by the agency, some of them stream gauging, some of them on other issues. Any Rain is a citizen science program. We have over 500 volunteers that will upload their daily rainfall into our system. That's a very popular program. But in the listing there, all of those blue items are actually links to elsewhere within WebPortal, and you can go to the map, the list, and all that sort of thing. You can also see in the column on the left a long list of dashboards. So we have one created for every in-stream location, in-stream water right. Several of them are for either species preservation or a mixture of recreation and species preservation. And this one is the big one, Platte River at Louisville. And so this is the USGS gauge that is the lowest in the Platte River system, just before the Platte River dumps into the Missouri. And it has various requirements throughout the year. Those are listed on the left. And then the latest 15-minute reading is picked up on the speedometer looking dial. And the various daily mean discharges are in the chart at the bottom. And we have several of these for all kinds of reasons. We even have one that is we created a virtual location because the in-stream water right is the sum of two different USGS gauges. And so we had to create a fake gauge, sum those up within Aquarius, really easy to do. And then we created another dashboard similar to this for that site. Some of our irrigators, the big canal companies, wanted to be able to look at stage and discharge together. And while you don't have it on this chart because it's a 7-day chart, but you can see the dots at the bottom that we have recent measurements in here. And if we were to go back 30 days on this chart, of course, we'd have a measurement in with both the measured stage and discharge. And so this type of a customized chart, it's pretty easy to do within WebPortal. Been pretty happy with that. One thing we're real excited about within WebPortal is that while you can look at USGS data on the map and you can look at it in a chart, when you go to download USGS data, we'd rather you go to the USGS and get that originally. We don't, it's a responsibility thing, I suppose, a legal thing. So we have this disclaimer here before you hit the download button. And if you do go ahead and download it, you get an empty file with a very similar disclaimer in there saying, you really should go to the USGS to get this information. So this was a concern that our department manager, deputies, deputy directors were very concerned about. We didn't want to be passing along, especially given the possibility that they may edit their data or change it in some way, and we don't catch that. So been very happy with the way we've been able to get WebPortal to work there. We have our own API, and anybody who's familiar with Aquarius knows that there are many, many different things that are available through that API, but it is password protected, and we keep that really tightly held. We do not pass out that password to anybody. It's only our own IT folks that are allowed to use that API, or anybody else who can log into Aquarius itself, because you can use it to upload data, make modifications, download all kinds of things. But we wanted some of the information to be really easy to get to, and so we created this API. It's public facing. It is download only, and the source is, of course, the Aquarius API. So this API hits the other one, pulls the data down, passes it straight across. And so the things that we've made available would be the stations list, the daily mean discharge, reservoir storage. That's either an average in one case or midnight storage in others. The instantaneous data, stage and discharge, as well as a shift listing. So we found those things to be the most helpful. We'd be happy to modify it if people needed other information, but I think they're pretty happy with those options at this point. I wanted to mention one other program kind of quickly or in passing, and I say rather quickly because I'm not very familiar with it, but our Far West office, the Bridgeport office, and their adjunct office in North Platte are that's our biggest office, is working with the Platte Water Accounting Program. We call it the PWAP, and it has over 200 inputs, inputs from USGS, USBR. Many of these come straight out of Aquarius, and they are captured under separate time series with separate naming conventions. So it's just copied over from our other sites to a site, a location that's labeled PWAP, but we also use it to input data. And so this uses the Aquarius API and shoves information into Aquarius that is coming from other locations. And the whole purpose of this program is to be able to do a daily accounting. You can see this is from August 19 of this year. A daily snapshot on the river that lets folks know exactly how much water can be taken from the North Platte, the South Platte, and the Central Platte. And various reports can be run using the software, but it's all utilizing the Aquarius database. And we've been very happy with that. This used to be running completely separately, and we had to use completely separate accounting for it. So that's been pretty interesting. I think this is our last example. This is kind of new. I guess our beta versions went on the web about a year ago. But it's Nebraska's real-time flood forecasting, and I think it's available at about 50 different locations. So we're looking at the city of Beatrice, which is between Lincoln and the Kansas County line here on the Big Blue River. And you can see the glowing dot in the center of the map is where the Streamgage is actually located. And you can see that we've got a widget there from NOAA, where we actually have their the stream flow right off their website. That doesn't matter most of the time. They're just reflecting our data. But when flooding comes along, then they extend that blue line into the future. So on the right-hand side of that widget, and they will also show various flood stages should you be worried about it. And you can use this site by above there's a link that says Flood Simulator, and you can click on it. So you can see on the color line on the bottom, the current stage is where the arrow is, and we've got that just under 16 feet at the time that we grabbed this screenshot. But I dragged the slider over to 27.5 on that line. You can drag it back and forth. And what that does is in real time, this particular website will expand and decrease the expected flooding in town. And so that's pretty cool. So emergency managers can take a look at that and say, we're expected to only go to 18. That means we should probably just put up some warning signs, for example, urging people not to drive into water. But if you go up to over 26, then you can start to see neighborhoods that will be impacted, and you can send deputies or police around or other emergency management help, and explain to people that the odds are in a couple of hours we're expecting flooding, your basement might get flooded, that sort of a thing. So this is just a really incredible tool. I might add, for City of Beatrice, they have spent millions since the 1960s by converting their low-lying land into parkland, farmland, golf courses, that sort of a thing. Flooding used to be a very serious issue in this town. So this is another tool that can just help keep people prepared and safe.
Yeah, I think that flood forecasting is one of the ones that's most interesting to me. So what advice do you have for other organizations that are hesitating to modernize their processes?
Well, for us, I'd have to say jump into it with both feet. Aquarius itself, installed locally, was a huge advance, that single source of truth that we were discussing. For us, moving it to the cloud and no longer dealing with state of Nebraska firewall issues, potential issues when we upgrade, that sort of thing. So the software as a service portion, in my opinion, was very, very beneficial. The one thing, and I understand you guys are still doing it, Dirk, and that is that business plan when you are converting from some other system into Aquarius. And I cannot emphasize enough how important that was. I was a little unclear on the benefit, and it wasn't cheap to do. Uh, and yet, looking back on it at consulting rates, I'm convinced you guys lost money on that. The people that helped convert our system put in so much time and did a lot of hand holding when that happened. And so, while I described earlier, we had our own hiccups, we had our issues with our own personnel, just not having enough time to check out the system as we were migrating. Um, I don't know how it could have gone smoother. So, and it didn't take more than a few weeks before our own technicians were just absolutely thrilled with the browser interface, the graphical nature of it, the ability to make all kinds of changes and see how it is, and then just quickly hit the little trash can icon, and you're back to your raw data, and you can start over again if that's what you want to do. It really freed them up to work their records.
We'll delete the part of the webinar where you said we didn't charge enough.
Oh, yeah. Well, I said I thought you charged too much, and I thought it was a great value by the time the whole process was done. So
awesome. All right. So I think this might be our last question for you, Jim. So what's next for Nebraska DNR? Where are you guys going from here in terms of leveraging all this data you're gathering?
As far as what we've got, like I said, we are looking at installing quite a few more locations for the purpose of flood monitoring and assisting our groundwater modelers. So they would be less expensive sites. So that's one thing we're doing. We had high hopes to install trail cameras, and that would be a separate system from Aquarius, but the photographs should be available via URL, and that plugs into WebPortal quite easily. That, for budget reasons, was put on hold recently. We've been talking with one of the natural resources districts, and that sounds a lot like Department of Natural Resources, and yes, people get us confused, but I believe it's in the Upper Republican NRD. We are talking about getting some ongoing monitoring wells with which we should be able to get the data via the internet in real time. We've been talking about adding those on, and that's pretty exciting, being able to have some groundwater information and watch how that responds to precipitation and stream flow, or how it impacts or implies what's going to be happening with the stream flow. So we would like to see the system continue to be used, developed, and increased.
Yeah. Awesome. So just as what Jim has mentioned, they're definitely working to put surface water to beneficial use. They're using dashboards, using partnerships. They're trying to forecast flooding. Just to give you an idea of what is possible when you are using Aquarius. And there's definitely a lot more possible than I can even imagine. So I want to thank Jim for that time. I know we do have some questions that have come in, so we'll go to those. And I'm not sure if you're able to see them, Jim, but I'll read them off to you and see if we can get them answered. So the first one is, are you getting and hosting data created and sponsored from USGS, USBR, etc., or are you sharing your generated data with those organizations?
Yes, the answer is it goes both directions. With the USGS, we actually have contractual partnership on a half dozen locations, generally where it has political information, meaning state compact accounting information. The states prefer having a third party take a look at that information. But they call us all the time to get information. If we measure at one of their sites, we happily turn it over. They use it sometimes they don't. So it goes both directions. USBR, I don't know to what extent they use our information. I'm sure they must. We use their information very heavily. So those are all definitely partnerships. Corps of Engineers doesn't have a lot in the state. They run Harlan County Dam, and that's pretty typical in the state. If irrigation's involved, it's going to be reclamation, not Corps of Engineers. But I do know I've talked to their website folks whenever we've made changes to our API. Then sooner or later they'll give us a call. All right, what changed? How do we get the info? So we talk about that.
Okay. All right. The next one we had is, what kind of feedback have you received from external partners about the quality of data that's now available?
Yeah, you know, I think the quality has always been there. But using Aquarius, number one, it's been faster and easier to get to where you believe in the numbers. Um, it's very quick and easy to spot issues, get in and fix the issues. So really, one of the main things is that it happens so much faster. So if they do a site measurement in the morning, then they can update it, and they've already worked the record for the past month by that very afternoon, certainly by the next day. And it usually is that fast. Whereas we used to have raw, unapproved data for months at a time. So we've been very happy with the record working cycle being improved.
I think you mentioned, either maybe it was to me or earlier, the number of requests you're receiving for data downloads has decreased significantly,
Oh, it's
especially with
huge.
WebPortal.
It's huge. 15 years ago, I used to get 2 or 3 a week, and some of those would be a very, very simple 1 or 2 gauges. I've only had 1 request for every single gauge, and they didn't want to do the work. And I was able to sift through and tell them, you don't want this list of 30 different gauges, because they're all copies of others that's for other purposes and that sort of thing. So I was glad I did the download for them. Um, but those requests have dramatically decreased. I get 1 request a month nowadays. And very often I'm able to point them to where they could download the information themselves, and they say thank you, and I don't hear from them again until they're asking a completely different question. And they often mention how good our tools are, how easy they are to navigate and get the info that they want.
That's great. All right. So the next one I think I might take: how customizable is the Aquarius platform to meet the specific needs of your stream gauging program? I don't know if you have thoughts on that, Jim, and then I can definitely jump in.
Customizable, I would say that probably starts with um, the overall data about the location. We included, I don't remember the number, but it's on the order of 10 or 12 uh, customized fields by which we tag our gauge. And so they are tagged by which field office is responsible for them. They are tagged by who the owner is, and that might be USGS or USBR or us or one of the big irrigation companies. We have a number of other tags like that. A number of our gauges are numbered using a completely different, actually, it goes back to alphabetical numbering. Um, so if you were to use only a USGS numbering system, then it's pretty much possible to use that. It is a downstream order number. but instead we have a separate tag with downstream order number. So that's been pretty nice. The thing that I've just started to explore is customized time series. If you want any sort of statistics, if you want annual total discharge, so an acre feet rather than CFS and that sort of a thing. Um, that's pretty easy to do, and it's fun to set those up. And very often, if people have a specific question like that, I'll just create a custom time series, download it, shoot them the table, then go ahead and delete it if I don't want it cluttering up my site. It is that fast to do.
Yeah, thanks. I think I'd add, I know the term one of my coworkers likes to use is fully configurable.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, if you have needs in your stream gauging program, definitely reach out, let us know there, and we can work to see how it would fit those needs and help solve them. So, all right. I got a couple more here. Where is the telemetry data initially stored or received? Is it decoded by Nebraska DNR or by Aquarius?
Yeah, yeah, that one came up at the annual conference. People would like to see it within Aquarius, and Aquarius is owned by the same company that has Sutron, which has the DCS toolkit available. So you would think they could talk, but anyway, we use, as many others do, Open DCS to do our decoding for us, and so that's on a state of Nebraska server, and we just configure that like everybody else does. I think our configuration's probably a couple of years behind, and so our IT folks are going nuts. But long as it works, we keep doing it. We'll update it soon. So the anything going through the telemetry system, the GHOST system, we download it, we decode it at the state of Nebraska, and our IT folks wrote a little routine that then shoves it to the cloud server into an FTP folder, and Aquarius Connect picks it up from there. So it has a hot folder system that it uses, and by and large, um, it runs trouble free. And in fact, um, I do have. I was working with it today, and there's a lot of files that need to be decluttered out of that FTP folder. So um, I'll be working on that, but it works pretty well.
Good. All right, and the last one that we have so far, what was the implementation like for Aquarius? Any training or onboarding? I can give a quick answer to that one. The training and onboarding, there's definitely both those are available. Training can be done on premise at your location, or we can do it remote. Time commitment's about the same for each. And really, the implementation depends on your familiarity. If you've used Aquarius in the past, if it's completely new, uh, is there a lot of data that needs to be migrated in that's historical that you'd like, or are you starting from scratch? There's lots of variables when it comes to the implementation. Um, the other piece I'd add on the training is we have a service called Aquatic Academy that's included for all of our customers that is basically an on-demand training course that's available online. You go on and watch a whole bunch of different 2-minute videos on different sections, how to do certain things. So that's definitely available for you all the time, even after you're fully implemented or you've done the training. So anything you want to add?
Yeah, I would say the training landscape has changed a lot in the last 5 years since we did ours. We had a trainer come on site for several days, and I thought it was super valuable. And it was not particularly easy to do, but we had the system installed on premises, and we actually went out to our Nebraska DOT training site where they had computers um, ready to go there. And nowadays, I think it could be done anywhere as long as folks had their own laptop. You go to a hotel conference room or whatever, because you can hit a cloud server. All you need is a good Wi-Fi and internet connection, and that training would work really well. I thought the on-site training was super valuable, but we have all been through webinars like this. Um, And so the training can be done remotely with great success, I'm sure. I've enjoyed the Aquatic Academy a lot. I don't think that was around 5 years ago. If it
No,
was,
no,
it
it
was
wasn't.
not nearly in the format that it is now. Um, and like you said, they're all about 2 minutes long. They try to make them very pointed to exactly what you're trying to learn, and that's been really useful. It was there and available when we switched to the cloud, which required no training at all, and started working with WebPortal. And I need to go back and rewatch those with WebPortal. It was a lot of good information, a lot
Awesome.
of information.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
All right. One more question. Is all your gauge telemetry via GOES satellite?
I believe it is. We used to have um, phone bills and cell phone bills that ran tens of thousands per month, um, because we used to use a particular type of Streamgage. It was a lot cheaper on the front end, but you paid for it every month because it used a phone line. Um, we have since transferred all of those over to GOES. Uh, like I mentioned with some of our transducers, they get downloaded. The older ones, you had to actually plug in wires to talk to them. The new ones are all using Bluetooth or something like that, so you can drive up next to them on the bridge and download the information, but it's not available in real time by any way. So pretty much we go through GOES. We've been looking at some quite inexpensive radars that use a local cell phone or cell phone-like system. We've had some success. We're not very far along with that. So um, next year, if you were to talk to me, the answer might be quite different.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Jim. Really appreciate you taking the time to help us out with this. Also want to thank everyone that attended or is watching a recording of this webinar. If you do have any questions that weren't answered, or you hang up and you're like, oh, I should have asked this question, feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to help out. Yes, thank you all for attending, and thanks again, Jim. Really appreciate it.
Glad to be here.